When he took his place as the leadoff runner in the 4x100 relay finals, it is impossible to know just how much of his mind was on matters that had become inseparable from his life as an athlete, like politics and social injustice and the weight you carry when you represent a lot more than just yourself. When, like it or not, you are more than one man, doing his very best at the thing he is better at than anyone else in the world. Until that morning, he wasn't even supposed to be in this race, which would have been more than okay with him. He already had 3 gold medals and nothing to prove to anyone. But he wasn't given a choice, and he was a competitor, so he competed. 39.8 seconds later, he had cemented his status as the greatest athlete of the decade and ensured that his name would never be forgotten. Today is Saturday, August 9th, 2025, and on this day in 1936, Jesse Owens decisively shattered the idea of an Aryan master race by winning his 4th gold medal of the Berlin Olympics as part of the U.S. relay team that broke the world record by 0.2 of a second. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. It is once again Salty Saturday, which means that today's episode is sponsored by Salt Stick, my absolute favorite source of electrolytes to take while running. I had a half marathon today, and it was absolutely brutal. Full sun, 90-degree heat, and hills that were basically Kilimanjaro. The only thing that kept me from either dropping out or dropping dead were drinking water every mile and alternating bonk breaker chews and salt stick fast chews every other mile. Let me tell you a quick story. So, last summer, when I was training for the Berlin Marathon in this same terrible weather, I would absolutely crave mugs of broth in the hours after my long runs. And it was so weird. And I could not figure out why broth. That's not something you usually crave, broth of all things. And after a few Google searches and a conversation with one of my friends about hyponatremia, it became clear that my body was begging me to up my electrolyte intake on those long, hot, incredibly sweaty runs. And that is how I discovered Salt Stick in the first place. And ever since I started monitoring sodium loss and combating it with their fast chews, I have not had any of those weird broth cravings. My race today was probably a PR in gallons of sweat lost, but between the Salt Stick fast chews and the Bonk Breaker energy chews, which also have added electrolytes, I was able to add back in everything that I sweat out. Listeners of Today in Running History can save 20% off y'all's purchase of both products using the links in the episode description, so make sure to check them out. Now let's talk about Jesse Owens. Take away his performance at the 1936 Olympics, and Jesse Owens would still be spoken of today. The Alabama-born son of a sharecropper whose actual name was James Cleveland, or JC, misunderstood as Jesse because of his southern accent, moved with his parents and 9 siblings to Ohio during the Great Migration when he was 9. It was there that his prowess on the track first emerged. As a Cleveland high school student, Owens tied the world record in the 100-yard dash, broke the national high school record in the 220-yard dash, and long jumped 24 feet 9.5 inches at the National High School Championships in 1933. He went on to Ohio State University, where he achieved the feat that is still referred to as the greatest 45 minutes in sport, winning 4 events and setting 5 world records at the 1935 Big Ten Championships. He won 8 individual NCAA titles in 2 years, an accomplishment that as of today still hasn't been matched. Leading up to the Berlin Olympics, Owens did face backlash from some sectors of his decision to compete rather than boycott the Olympics. For his part, Owens called out the hypocrisy of his fellow Americans and President Roosevelt, who condemned Germany but treated its own non-white citizens as second class at best. And most of those detractors ultimately came to view his domination in Berlin as a net positive, made even more satisfying when pondering what the tweaked out Hitler must have been thinking as he watched this non Aryan decimate the competition in event after event. During the first week of competition, Owens won 3 gold in decisive fashion: the 100 meters on August 3rd, the long jump on August 4th, and the 200 meters on August 5th. While the long jump is known as his, quote, best event, Jesse Owens didn't really have a weakness. A lot of times when you watch old track and field footage, the athletes seem awkward and unimpressive by today's standards. Not Jesse Owens. His stride was pure, effortless art. So smooth, you could have balanced a cup of coffee on his head during a race and he would not have spilled a drop. As we talked about in yesterday's episode, Owens was only in the position to win his 4th gold medal because the 2 Jewish members of the 4x100 relay team were benched by coaches who didn't want to offend Hitler. Owens protested, but his words fell on deaf ears. Lawson, Robertson, and Dean Cromwell, the Olympic track coaches for Team USA, were clear that the decision was final and none of the athletes had any say in the matter. And so, on August 9th, 1936, exactly 89 years ago today, Jesse Owens took his place at the starting line with his teammates Ralph Metcalfe, Foy Draper, and Frank Wyckoff situated at each 100-meter handoff spot around the track. Though Jesse Owens was objectively the fastest on the team, the amount he had competed already that week led to the coach's decision to have him run the first leg of the relay. Ralph Metcalfe, who had won silver in the 100 meters just behind Owens, was the second leg, with Foy Draper third and Frank Wyckoff anchor. The 4 men easily won their qualifying heat and in doing so tied the existing world record of 40 seconds flat. Later that same day, the 4 Americans took their same starting places for the 4x100 meter final. They won that race even more definitively, a full 15 meters ahead of and more than a second faster than the team in second place. There were 3 things that made that win so special. First of all, it was Foy Draper's 3rd consecutive win in that event, as he had been part of the team that had also taken gold in 1928 and 1936. Next, it was a new world record of 39.8 seconds, the first time in history a team had completed that distance in less than 40 seconds. And most significantly, it was Jesse Owens' 4th gold medal, all within a single Olympic Games. He was not the first Olympian to reach this incredible achievement. Paavo Nurmi of Finland had won 5 gold medals at the 1924 Olympics, and you can go listen to the July 28th episode to hear more about him. Fellow Finn Villa Ritola, also mentioned quite a bit in that July 28th episode, had won 4 gold medals at the same Olympics. And American Alvin Cranesline won 4 gold medals at the Olympics all the way back in 1900, though he was dead by the time Jesse Owens became the second American to do so. But although 3 men had accomplished the quadruple Olympic gold before him, Jesse Owens winning 4 gold medals as a Black American athlete in the middle of Hitler's Nazi Germany was especially significant. His absolute dominance in multiple athletics disciplines was in stark contrast to the Aryan racial superiority promoted by Hitler and his regime. In the 89 years since Jesse Owens' quadruple gold, the feat has only been repeated twice. First by Fanny Blankers-Koen at the 1948 Olympics, and she remains the only woman on the list, and then by Carl Lewis in 1984. In addition, the 1936 Olympics in Berlin were the first to appear on television, the first to be photographed in color, and were broadcast live on the radio around the world. This meant that despite Nazi Germany's best efforts to control the media through propaganda, they could not prevent the footage of Owens absolutely dominating at all 4 of his events from being shared globally. Hitler, whose greatest priority at the time was curating his own public image, shook hands with and congratulated Jesse Owens on his accomplishment so that he could be seen doing so. But according to Nazi minister Albert Speer, he was privately seething. And I love that for him. Jesse Owens returned to the US and was received by the public in contrasting ways. For example, a parade was thrown in his honor in New York City with Mayor LaGuardia of airport fame there to greet him. But after the parade, he was prevented from entering the main doors of his hotel and instead had to take the freight elevator. President Roosevelt never invited Owens to the White House or even gave him a congratulatory phone call. In the months that followed the Olympics in Berlin, Jesse Owens was all but forced into a grueling racing tour across Europe. And when he eventually refused to race anymore, the IOC president retaliated by suspending Owens from amateur competition, which effectively ended his athletic career. Racism back home in the US made it difficult for Jesse Owens to find work once he was no longer running competitively. And he had to resort to custodial jobs and racing against horses and automobiles for money. When he was 32, Owens picked up a smoking habit, which progressed to a full pack every day and lasted 35 years. He died of lung cancer in 1980 at the age of 66, at which point President Jimmy Carter put out a statement in the Washington Post. It said, quote, "No athlete better symbolized the human struggle against tyranny, poverty, and racial bigotry than Jesse Owens." That is all for today's episode. Thank you all so much for continuing to listen. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, rate me 1,000,000 stars, and then show this episode to the guy in line in front of you at the grocery store. As a reminder, today is Salty Saturday, and listeners of the pod can save 20% off your order through the link that is in the episode description. Join me tomorrow as we head to 1984 to learn about one of the most infamous falls in track history. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. The Alabama, oh my God. Actually, I made it really, that was like a PR in how far I made it before I started tripping over my words. All right. Alabama born. Okay. No, I'm just going to start over so you don't have to isolate that one sentence. So, the tweaked out Hitler must have been thinking as he watched his non-Aryan. He's not his. Okay, let's see. During the first week of competition, Owens won 3 gold in decisive. I need a cup of broth right now. I don't actually. I don't know why I said that. Okay. In the 89 years since Jesse Owens' quadruple gold, the feat has only been repeated. The feat has only been repeated. Oh my God. Feet repeated. Okay. In the 89 years since Jesse Owens... I am almost there. I can do this. Okay. It said, quote, "No athlete better symbolized the human struggle against tyranny, poverty, and racial..." God, and that's such a good quote, and I can't get through it. Racial. Oh my God. All right, great.